Well, I don't want to break our record for starting on time. It is my honor and my pleasure to welcome you to the 33rd annual meeting of Doctors for Disaster Preparedness. It is good to see so many old friends and some new faces, but it is very sad that we are missing two of our directors this time. Dr. Claude Boyd, who'd been coming to these meetings just about as long as I have, a dermatologist from Georgia, was working in his office on a Saturday morning trying to fix something electrical, fell down and died unexpectedly. Dr. Howard Maccabee, who was one of our founders and who was here, of course, every year, was a nuclear physicist before he was a physician in radiation oncology, had the opportunity to work with Edward Teller. We relied on him for his expertise both in radiation matters and in global warming and a number of other subjects. So we will miss him greatly. So could we have a moment of silence for our missing friends? Thank you. Some of the resources that we have to offer are here. One subject that is missing from our program is civil defense this year, not because it isn't important, not because we don't have any threat of war, but because there are no agencies of the government that have any interest in it whatsoever. There is nothing new in the field of civil defense. It's all in what we have already provided, information we've already provided. Our nation's perhaps one and only civil defense activist, Stephen Jones, is not with us this year because he's visiting his son in Japan. His latest project is the Oh Shucks meter, named for the last words on cockpit recordings when airplanes go down. It was his belief that the only way we could make sufficient radiation monitoring equipment of any kind available to all of our first responders in an emergency was to cut up the chemical sensors in the CIRAD cards and put them on dot monitors. And we have given hundreds of these to firefighters. I have a few here that I can give you one if you want it, but I mention it only to tell you absolutely positively you must not cut up your CIRAD card because you might be violating somebody's patent rights and you need to wait for the production lines to get revved up so we can make more of them. If you are on social media, please follow us on Twitter at D4DP and pass it along to your friends. ddponline.org has recordings from our past meetings. We put them up after a certain period of time has passed. Physicians for Civil Defense has all of our press releases and other things. There is a 25-year archive of our newsletters, which turned out to be quite a thick notebook. I was surprised. It's on the table for you to look at, but we are making flash drives with a fully searchable PDF file available. I did this because if people ask me a question, and I know I wrote about it sometime, but I can't remember what it is, this is the quickest way to find it. OISM.org is an invaluable resource. It also has the downloadable free copy of Crescent Carney's Nuclear War Survival Skills and offers that for sale. If you don't have one, you need it, get it now. And the Nuke Alert ER and CIRAD cards and other things are available at ki4u.com. To speak to you about a few reflections on the state of affairs in our country and about the program here, I would like to go back to something published in the year 750 BC, or came from 750 BC. Thus he showed me, and behold, the Lord stood upon a wall made by a plumb line, with a plumb line in his hand. And the Lord said unto me, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, a plumb line. Then said the Lord, behold, I will set a plumb line in the midst of my people Israel. I will not again pass by them anymore. So there was no grading on the curve here. It wasn't going to do to say, well, we're not as bad as the Philistines. There were going to be consequences, and the high places of Isaac shall be desolate, and the sanctuaries of Israel shall be laid waste, and I will rise against the house of Jeroboam with the sword. Jeroboam was killed, and the people were taken into captivity. But did the king appreciate this advanced intelligence? No, he did not. He accused the Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, sent to Jeroboam, king of Israel, saying, Amos has conspired against me. He was accused of prophesying against the king for money and was kicked out of the kingdom. As the French say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. We see all of the people trying to speak truth to power are actually experiencing the same thing. Amos protested, "I'm not a prophet. I don't do it for money. I'm a sheep herder and a dresser of figs." Well, these days, our dear friend Sally Balloonis, a brilliant astrophysicist who told the truth to Congress, is now making her living as a sheep herder. And she has told me, "I really enjoy the company of my dogs and my sheep. They don't tell lies." And many of the people who are with us today are under a similar attack. What were the transgressions? They were going to sell wheat, making the ephah, which is like a bushel small, and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit. There was lying, cheating, and stealing, and probably debasing of the currency. Have you looked at the contents of what you buy in the grocery store? Or looked at the value of the dollar? So things seem to be sort of the same. In case some of you young people have never seen a plumb line, there's one. They used it to build walls in 750 BC. This particular one was retrieved recently from my daddy's survey kit. These days, I understand that surveyors have the GPS to help them locate things. In my daddy's day, they drove stakes in the ground. They had a transit to site elevations. They had measuring chains, and they used trigonometry. Well, these days we still use trigonometry, which is buried in computer algorithms, which will be with us forever and ever, as long as nobody sets off a nuclear weapon high in the atmosphere, and as long as the power grid doesn't go down. So I would suggest that you old folks keep your slide rules and your math tables. So I'd like to say a little bit about the settled science that we hear so much about that you're not allowed to question, and there will be a lot of that questioned here at this meetings, but I present this as an example of a settled building. You all recognize this, of course. Construction started in 1173 AD. The Italian architects, with all of these columns and arches, showed a brilliant understanding of the distribution of weights and so on. Wonderful building. The only thing wrong with it is the foundation. And it started to settle soon after the first 3 stories were constructed. So they let it sit for about 100 years to see whether it maybe would settle out. It was built on clay. And then after that, some architects tried adding some stories to it with the columns higher on one side than on the other, hoping to straighten it out. But that only made it worse. The building somehow survived several wars, and now it's a very popular building. It's diverse. People come from all over the world to admire it for its diversity. It's not straight up and down. It's not normal. Normal means perpendicular to the ground. But it was tilting more and more and becoming unsafe, so they had to shut it down and made a serious effort to rescue it. But they didn't want to straighten it out completely because they wanted people to keep coming to see it. And this was one of the expedients that they used. That is 800 tons of that poisonous substance lead, which needs to be banned from the periodic table, but in the meantime, it is serving as a counterweight to keep the building from falling down. They also cautiously removed some dirt from under it, and it's anchored by some cables that are anchored underground, and they really have reduced the tilt quite a bit. So you can now climb to the top of the tower, but still, things cannot defy the laws of nature forever. The masonry in this building has been subjected to abnormal forces for centuries, and when the masonry starts to crumble, that tower is going to fall down. We know that. Well, some of the settled science we will discuss at this meeting is the linear no-threshold theory, the computer models for catastrophic global warming, even the HIV/AIDS hypothesis. These are settled science. I hear that term over and over and over again, and we're going to question them. I mean, I think it was very nice to rescue this beautiful building. It's a historic landmark and so on. But what about trying to rescue bad science on a bad foundation? That we really do need to challenge. At our tour of the Jet Propulsion Lab, we saw one example of the horrendous results of this bad science. I think we all enjoyed seeing the Rover 3, the model of the Rover 3, which is now studying Mars, and it'll be there for hopefully more than a decade. Something the Rover 3 lacks that the earlier things had was those cute little solar panels. And the guide explained to us that it used plutonium-238, a nuclear power source that creates not only electricity, but some excess heat that can be used to keep the thing warm. We are already up to speed. We learned about nuclear power sources in space when I was in junior high school, in a little weekly that we had called Junior Scholastics. But of course, we couldn't use it recently because it might explode on the launching pad and disseminate this plutonium-238 all over the place. So we used solar panels. The Rover 2 died and froze because it landed and its solar panels were turned away from the sun. And the guy told us, you know, this new thing, it makes power in the nighttime also. And it'll last for many years. It won't get covered by the Martian dust, which would shut down the solar panels, which are a little hard to clean when you're on Mars. So that's what we have. This is just one small example of what our bad science and panic over the wrong thing has caused us. Well, we are into, as you all know, a lot of cultural problems that have moral relativism. This is an example of reality relativism, which was sent to me by a 90-year-old woman who was born in Vienna, who doesn't like what she sees happening here because she's seen it all before, and it comes to a bad outcome. I'd like to thank again our speakers for being here. We are very honored to have these very brave men who are standing up to the powers that be, who understand that the true foundation of science is a devotion to absolute truth, to following the data wherever it leads. You shall know the truth shall set you free. Prove all things, hold fast to that which is good, do away with the things that don't. And it's not only the foundation of science, but the foundation for liberty, as Angela Codevilla pointed out in a brilliant essay recently. As the great Solzhenitsyn reminds us, the sine qua non of liberty is refusal to live by lies. So now I'd like to turn the program over to our MC, Dr. Arthur Robinson, to introduce our courageous and brilliant speakers.